And if you were to ask me why this is so, why I don't prepare, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I could say, well, maybe the time I spent with Hussein gave me enough information, enough talent, enough creativity to just play with ideas, in the moment. And if you were to ask me where does this talent come from, I have no idea. I'll just pass it by saying, well, I suppose it's a gift. Some have it, some don't. I can't claim ownership to the gift. So when you come to me and say, Amir, you were really, really good, I say, okay, I'm not going to get too excited. If that makes any sense.
It does.
Grace?
Oh, I have a handful of questions.
Is it both hands or just one hand?
Just one. I'm not ambidextrous. I'll pick one of these things. I don't know which one to pick. Here, can I give you two and you can choose the one that's more
Sure.
With Professor Kendra, when we touched briefly on time and the ways that different cultures perceive time, and the time is a circle versus time is a line. So that's one. And then the other one is, can you talk a little bit about bravery?
Bravery?
Yeah.
Let me just say something about time first. And then I won't probably say anything about bravery, because I don't have much of it. Yeah. Time is a funny concept because it's linked to some extent with pleasure. First, time is a movement. Second, a human being is engaged in time, not so much animals or plants. I don't think they are. And human beings, for the most part, don't simply go into life, or they simply don't move into time. They go in there with an agenda. Now, sometimes you know that you work for Home Depot and it's not going to be a very pleasant time, but you don't really keep that in mind. Once you go to Home Depot and you wear your costume and you have to wear your mask and you just move around. And there is something about just being engaged in anything that consumes you. Okay? So if you're familiar with, say, the four elements that occupy all of us, which is earth, fire, air and wind. Air and water, right? So what you have for the most part that relates to us most vigorously is fire, because it's all consuming. Once you're consumed by a certain emotion, let's just say anger, the rest of life disappears. You're just angry. You come to class angry. You go to work angry. You talk to your companion angrily, okay? So once you're at Home Depot just owns you. And I'm not talking about just your physical body. You just become engaged with the nails and the screws of the shop. Then as you're walking, you have a moment of reflection. And let's just say you happen to have the habit of reflecting once in a while, which is, why am I here? Maybe I should just go back and work for my dad's shop. I'll have a bit more leisure time, okay? Now, the moment you begin to reflect and examine, especially in environments that are not giving you pleasure, time drags, okay? Now, let's just say you've been sitting in this class and you keep looking at the clock. It could be for a couple of reasons. Either you have a doctor's appointment, you want to make sure you don't miss it. Either the class is going really well for you, you're excited, inspired, and you don't want it to end. Or there is not an inkling of inspiration, excitement about you when it comes to this class. And you keep looking at the clock and it's just standstill, it's frozen, okay? In times of pleasure, time moves really, 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 really fast. In times where there is only pain, time moves really, 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 really slow. I don't much care about the cyclical or the linear aspects of time. Like if you do the Eastern tradition, life is cyclical, therefore time is cyclical. You're never born, you never die, because you're going to come back into the same thing over and over again. And you could take that metaphorically. But before we go to the metaphorical aspect of circular and linear time has to do with you're born at a certain point in history and you die, and then there is your judgment, or maybe not, and that's it. But I think it'll be much better for you to look at the linear and the circular aspect of time in this particular way. People who have an addiction are very compulsive. They're extremists. Let's say you've been playing video games 10 hours a day since you were 5, and now you're 18. It is true that you can get rid of playing video games, but you will probably do porn for the next 10 years, just the same way you were doing the video games. Let's just say you kind of overcome that, and then you have interest in books. You do the same thing with books. And so the foundation of everything that you do, your behavior, is what we call reincarnation or circular, okay? That you keep repeating the same modes of behavior and it never ends. Linear time, on the other hand, means you've come to realize you have an addiction of sorts, okay? There comes a point where you say, I no longer want to do this, and you put a stop to that particular addiction, to compulsion, and all the things that come with it. I think for the 21st century folks, that's a much better way of looking at time, the circular linear aspect of it, without making it too esoteric. Bravery, I don't know. Can I tell you a story about bravery? 1978, 79, we left India for Iran. I was probably 12 or 13, I think 12. And it was a time of revolution. Do I know what revolution is? No. And it was about justice. People demanded that the Shah no longer sleep with the West. They wanted the money that comes from selling the oil to go to people, to the country. Did I understand those things at the age of 12? No. Was I an avid reader of politics? No. All I knew is that I go out and people are screaming, and man, that's fun. So every morning for the next 3, 4, 5 months, my brother and I and a good amount of friends, we would go into the streets with thousands of people marching, shouting, screaming. On one occasion, there was this military truck that drove near the crowd, stopped, and soldiers came out. And they began to open fire. Now, something happens during those moments of inspiration where you're no longer your body. You're all about justice, even though you don't understand it. The crowd and the chanting and the concepts that you don't really understand, they have all consumed you. And I suppose if you were to borrow from Plato, you now belong to the world of ideas. You're all mind and no flesh. And I remember many of us would jump to the foreground of the crowd and say, shoot me. I don't mind dying for justice. I don't mind dying for an idea. You can, as V would say in the movie V for Vendetta, you can kill my body, but you can't kill the idea. Okay? That's being very brave, or perhaps very stupid. But remember, whether you want to call it bravery or stupidity, it's the outcome of a moment of inspiration. I think think many of students exercise bravery in their classes. It's very calculated, it's very political, and it's because they understand. Let's say I say something, and I probably have, that you, let's just say, haven't enjoyed hearing. You want to raise your hand, maybe you want to badmouth me a little in front of all these people, but you say, is it to my benefit to be brave in a stupid way and possibly fail the class? Or is it better for me to keep my mouth shut, get my grade, and then go away? And I think it takes a lot of courage to eat your words and eat your emotions, make sure they don't come out, so you could get a bit more closer to your graduation. But to be brave, you need to, first of all, have a lot of awareness. You need to have a lot of physical, emotional, intellectual power. That's all I can say about bravery. Or you can watch the movie Braveheart with Mel Gibson. It's perhaps the best example. A guy who goes to India, to Greece, to Persia, and learns all these different languages. He doesn't want to fight. He's only there to get married, have a family. And then his wife, who, he marries in hiding, gets butchered, and something happens to him.
It seems like there are a lot of trade-offs between, or not necessarily trade-offs, a lot of these ideas that we ask you about often have several interpretations. Bravery is also stupidity, or innocence. Hope is also foolishness.
Yes. Now, having said that, forgive me for interrupting you. That's one of the awful things about the social sciences.
Got it.
You know why?
No, please don't.
It offers you all these ridiculous, stupid perspectives. Like, you raise your hand and you say, Amir, F you. As a social scientist, I should say, oh, maybe she had a bad day. Maybe I should buy her a cookie. Maybe she has some mental deficiencies. Maybe just before coming to class, she was mugged. I have to go through 1,001 different things and say, you know what? What Grace said is okay. If, on the other hand, I would be a bit more black and white like Moses, I would just go to my dean and say, I just don't want her in my class. End of story. One of the problems of the social sciences, humanities, history, philosophy, psychology, is that it tries to understand perspectives. And the truth is, I don't think it's good for people. You're supposed to behave a certain way in class. I don't care about your background. Come to class dressed in a certain way. I'm not in the business of understanding every goddamn aspect of your life. It's none of my business. And I don't like that imposition. Don't sneeze. I'm just kidding. And that's one of the things about this culture. You have to kind of just cater to every disability and every dysfunction out there. There was this person who was visually impaired, i.e. blind. And in New York, they applied to get this, I don't know what you call it, policing traffic in a very busy street in New York, but you're blind. And so when this person submitted the application and they put down, I am blind, they said, I'm sorry, we can't give you this job because, well, you can't see. So he sued the city and he won. You're supposed to stop traffic. You're blind. It makes no sense. But this is what happens when a country is just about to go down. It's borderline just absurd. Every single day.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Allahu Akbar. I'm upset right now, and I don't even know why.
I did. I have a lot of feelings about that. Some of it I instinctively don't like, and kids tell you when you don't like something, I'm telling you. But also, part of, like, I don't know, I'm inclined to be like, I mean, not in that situation, because, like, stop directing traffic and not being able to see said traffic that makes me anxious. I don't want that person out there. They're going to get hit by a car. Unless they can hear it, which is also, but then also it's like absurdity. Sometimes I kind of enjoy it. Sometimes absurdity is wonderful. Fun.
It is if you're not impacted by it, yes.
Brilliant, yes, that's exactly it. But nuance, right? That's the social sciences thing. That's this thing that has riled you up a little bit. Is it's like all things can be considered different ways.
Yeah, but why would you want to care?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't care about your history. Why the hell are you mugging me? Am I supposed to sit there and understand the reason as to why I'm being bullied by you? Yeah. I'm sorry, Rafael.
This thing he's saying of you, pretty much saying that you're embracing the judgment you have of this world around you, saying that there's something broken about it. Like the blind guy that sues the city wins. You know, don't you say that every generation or every century is saying this? I instinctively agree with you, right? In general, but I try to catch myself to say, my daughter is going to say that of her kids, and their kids are going to say that. Isn't it an endless?
It is.
A century ago, you would have never showed up without a tie and they would have looked at me without, like, you haven't shaved. How dare you showing up in this class? You wearing
in the class.
you wearing pants. How dare you? You know, like, you're a woman. Like, there's always something, and so.
As long as you're in the midst of imperfection, you have no choice but to make judgments. That's how it is. Now, judgments could be based on biases or it could be based on observation.
Observation and reflection take you more towards nuance rather than automatically.
When I first started at Laney, I had a lot of athletes, basketball and football, mostly football players. They sucked. I tried to be understanding. You know, I said, oh, well, this is Oakland. They need a scholarship. They need this class. I'll help them. They were loud. They were obnoxious. They were silly. They were stupid. Their essays really just sucked. Most often, they never wrote an essay. And when it came time for me to fail them, sometimes the coach would send me an email saying, oh, they just got picked up by the Niners. Is there anything that he can do to pass the class? And so as I became a bit more seasoned, as I got to know the psyche of athletes, their sense of entitlement, the moment I would walk into the classroom at the very beginning of the semester, I would ask, my first question would be, any athletes in this room? If their hand went up, I would say, I'm going to fail you. Didn't know them. It was my first minute of meeting them, and they would drop the class and leave. And later on, I would tell the coach, don't have your kids come to my class. I will fail them. Now, do I know every athlete out there, their future, their past? No. But I realized 99% of the athletes who came to my class just didn't want to do work. And they would make the entire energy of the class just negative. I didn't want to be around that. Was that based on a bias without observation? No. I'd gone through it semester after semester after semester. And that became the foundation of my judgment. Is it good to pass judgments? Yeah, if you've been there and done that, why not? Could you be wrong? Yeah. My life is not infinite. I only have an hour and 15 minutes. And as you age, You want things to be a little bit more serious, healthy, functional. You don't want some stupid guy in the back to just laugh for no reason. Good job. You've made me angry now. It's not good for my health. Silly.
Well, my question that I brought to class, which is different, are you asking me to comment on this?
Anything.
Really, this morning I woke up wanting to call it home, hang on. But no, the thing that I was wondering is, what was your favorite childhood story? From your childhood.
You just go into the streets and play. From the moment the sun rises to the time it goes down. You just don't come home. Parents don't look for you. The entire neighborhood is your friend. You don't need babysitters. You don't need your parents to sign you up for this camp or that camp. For the most part, you're like a stray animal. You wake up, you go to places, and then you come back home. And just in case you make any missteps, your parents have no problem spanking you, slapping you, kicking you, punching you. And if they caught you like lying or stealing, as I did many times, your mom would put salt and pepper in your mouth and drag you in the streets. And you wail, you cry, you scream, and your parents don't care. And it's too bad that I can't do that to my own kids.
Because of the social sciences.
Because of the social sciences, because, of SPCA, of many reasons. There is something to be said about mild physical punishment. And that kids need to, to some extent, be afraid of their parents. I mean, parents are not your friends. I invest time in my kids. Time, energy, my life. And so the idea that they can go out and just come home with any kind of a friendship, that's ridiculous for me. I don't want them to smoke. I don't want them to drink. I don't want them to do anything that I feel to be inappropriate. And as I age, a lot of things are inappropriate. Opening your eyes is inappropriate. Listening to music is bad. And I don't like the American culture. So anything American is poison for my kids. But the problem is, we live here. What the hell do you do? And so, I go back in time and I say, despite all the harshness of life some 60 years ago, most of us who came here turned out really, really relatively decent people. I mean, we have lots of flaws, but the foundation is relatively good. And kids today, man, they suck. They really, really do. And whether or not they'll change, it depends really for the most part on the culture. Because culture gives you a different kind of food. Your parents give you food for the belly. The culture gives you food, that creates desires, ambitions, emotions, thoughts. And right now it's just mostly trash. But you had mentioned about child, yes?
I was going to say that teachers, teachers who are like grade school or say that they notice when it comes to careers, most of them have shifted from usually to astronaut, space and everything. That was maybe the climate at the time, space, but now it's like a blogger or a YouTuber or a streamer. And I was going to say, was that like 40 to 50 years ago, it was okay to just go out and then come back, but it gradually became more and more neuter, like just too much concern about the safety. But I was mainly just asking about like how that show was like an illness of
I can't say I understand your question completely, but let me just focus on a couple of words that you said. If you have any talent, and if you can YouTube your talent and make money off of that talent on YouTube, instead of working for In-N-Out or Home Depot, or even going to school, taking ridiculous classes, you should do that. because the culture now gives you that particular platform and window of opportunity. Instead of being exploited by Home Depot, use your talent. There are lots of cheap buyers out there who are willing to swallow garbage. Hopefully the talent you have is like playing the piano or writing good literature or doing something that's valuable, you know. And now you could say, well, what do you mean by something being valuable? That's complicated. I don't really know, okay? A couple of people come to mind when it comes to, say, making money off of YouTube. Or maybe just one person, or maybe two. There is a guy whose name I don't know. He has this channel called Epic Chess. And what he does is, like Magnus Carlsen plays Ali Reza Firuze. And he gives like a 12-minute commentary on the game. And he's really, really good, very competent, very proficient. He's read a lot of books about chess, the history of chess. He knows all the great players who've ever lived. So his commentary are very, very, very rich. And the first thing or the second thing or the third thing that he says, just in case you like my commentary, please subscribe. It's a great way of making a living. You know, why the hell would you want to go somewhere and work for someone when you can have your own business, have your own YouTube channel, and have subscribers, and you get paid? The other is Peter Buka, this 20-year-old Hungarian kid who plays immaculate piano. Beautiful. You know, so if you can kind of create those things for yourself on YouTube, you should do it. I have no shame about it. People are more than willing to be exploited by trash as well as non-trash. And hopefully the talent you have is something decent. Maybe you're just talented wearing lingeries, I don't know. We have like a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. And YouTube brought to you by the social sciences. Largely. It works because of the social sciences research. It's not necessary. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying it's.
No, it's true.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's true.
Therein lies the knock.
Yeah.
Biggest question. Challenges.
No, just being naughty. Just being crazy. Being stupid and recover from it very quickly. I got good beatings from my father. I think the ones I remember 2 times. One was in our little Volkswagen. And the other was with a belt. You know, parents must really care for you so much where you push them towards frustration. That frustration blossoms into anger and it consumes them. And they physically hurt you so you could pay attention and be worried about your future. I mean, these are not things you understand early in life. And I've had thousands of great moments with my father. And I remember if I was to talk about like healthy forms of abuse, I remember I had told Hussein that I'll go see him, say, on a Tuesday at his shop or his home. But I never went. I never called. And then I go in like a week later. He says, so Amir, remember you promised to come to my house? Yeah, and you didn't call. We didn't have cell phones then. And he looks at me and he slaps me. And he says, you think I'm here to waste my time? I said, well, okay. He says, I don't want to see you, go home. And I had bought him a cake. And I went to my car, took out the cake to give him. He says, I don't want your cake, get lost. And I remember going to my mom's cousin, Hussein's house, and I broke down. And it's interesting because you have a man with whom you spent about almost 40 years of your life. And yet, what you remember are those moments that he was so unkind for all the right reasons. I don't remember the good times with my dad, and there have been plenty. But the difficult times, man, I remember them. And I remember them now because I'm a parent. And because I know frustration. I know the worries that consume parents. And I'm from the Middle East, which means that unlike Western parents, at least some of them that I know, if you're from the Middle East, your entire life revolves around your kids. You don't really have ambitions of your own. That's not the way the culture is set up. Maybe it's different now, I don't know. But when I was born, your mom is just a mom. That's the only profession she has. Your dad goes out there, works about 12, 14-hour shifts, comes back home, and he's there with the family. There is no TV. You know, and it's a shame culture. You can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't have casual relationships with other people. It doesn't work that way. And so if you happen to be a parent that's so heavily invested, and that's how cultures have been for the longest time in our history. It's really been recent where parents are privileged enough to be a mom, to be a CEO, to have their own friends, to have their own whatever, you know. And so the more you're invested, of course, the more hurt you'll become when your children disappoint you. And the more consumed you'll be with frustration and anger and despair. I mean, my father retired at the age of 49 to come to America. And you may think it's a casual thing. You have lived in your culture for 49 years. You don't know the English language. You don't know the American culture. And you come here and do what? You wash cars. Why? Your kids are there. But why don't you just keep them in Iran? Educational system, poverty. But you don't understand the sacrifices that parents make. Any kind of parent, it doesn't really matter until they become contaminated with their own stuff, you know. And so, yeah, those are some really, really good memories that I have. My father just belting and slapping me. Beautiful. You know, it's good to be abusive for the right reasons. By the way, I'm not saying that being physical with your kids is a good thing. I'm just saying it was a good thing for me. But it took me 50 years to get it. So, I am so sorry we've gone over.
Can you really do anything as a parent? That's the question. Can you really do anything?
You know, if you go back some 3,000 years ago to the life story of the Buddha, you have the archetypal parents. And by that I mean the following. You have parents everywhere on this planet from, I suppose, the dawn of history. They didn't want any harm to come to their kids. In times of the Buddha, at least as far as I know that tradition a little, his parents didn't talk about drugs or violence or prostitution or YouTube to come into their kid's life. All they wanted to make sure that that don't happen to him was they didn't want the young kid to ask difficult questions. Why am I here? Who am I? You know, why is there life? Why is there pain? Why is there death? Those are the things parents didn't want to contaminate their kids with. Today, the story is very different. You don't even have the time, or the energy, or even the reflective abilities to say, okay, I don't want my kid to ask difficult questions. The things you need to worry about these days, I want my kid not to come home using profanities. I want to make sure they're not addicted to their cell phone, to my cell phone at the age of 2. I want to make sure that the kids, their friends don't smoke, don't drink. I want to make sure their school is good. They don't see too much violence out there. And these days, it's nearly impossible. So you do very much like the Buddha's parents do. You do. You just do it in a different way. You're fearful of different things. Unlike the Buddha's parents, you will fail.
Yeah. You don't think that they are thinking?
No.
Seeds?
They'll be trampled upon, destroyed, crushed. No seeds will ever blossom.
They will.
And if they do, poison inside them.
They will.
I am so sorry for such an exciting class today. Have a nice day. Remember next week will be our last week. So, yeah. It's good to see you. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Tell your parents I said hello.
Your ruthlessness sounds like a